Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Lawrence Connolly to talk about the world of Celtic. Lawrence, how are you from this time last week?
I'm well. If still a little disappointed in the performances, but we've got a big game on Thursday. We've got followed by another big game at the weekend to try and keep our domestic cup run going. So it's might be difficult times, but they're also exciting times. At least they're interesting.
They're always interesting now. The first comments have started coming in on our social media channels via Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. We have been awash with comments over the last few days, Lawrence. And the first one is from Stuart McDade. Let's get positive again. That's our best support right now. It's difficult. There's a whole different dynamic with regards to supporting Celtic at the moment because we can't be there. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Jim Orr was saying that he believes that he can actually make a difference by being there as a fan. I think you do. But it can become frustrating, and what we notice that then people obviously vent online on social media, and again that's one of its uses, I think, Lawrence. Let's go back to last week. Last week we were sitting here on Tuesday and we were looking ahead to Thursday night against Milan and then Sunday against Aberdeen. Well, this week we're looking forward to Thursday night against Lille and Sunday once again against Aberdeen. So let me just get some of your kind of hot takes, as Kevin Graham calls it, from the two games in between your last visit and now.
See, performances have improved. Milan's flying high in Italy. Obviously, a performance against them second half improved when they took some of the better players off. Defensively, we're still a bit at sea, aren't we? The defence isn't performing as it should, but maybe it's a reflection on that. I think we've got most of our injuries and issues in that area. Yeah, so perhaps, what is our best defence? Our formation keeps changing. Well, I think everybody likes wee Frimpong, but we can see, we can see he's lacking. He's trying to learn the position. When the opposition have the ball, often he's a wee bit high and wide. He doesn't get his distances right for the centre half. He doesn't get his line right. Ordinarily, Milan flying high in Italy, would that have been a bad result? Especially the second half, we seem to come in here a bit. It's bad as in, it's a defeat, but I thought second half, the team has shown a bit of fight. The Aberdeen game, again, defensive problems. 3 each at Pittodrie. Pittodrie used to be a hard place to go. Is it becoming a hard place to go again? We let ourselves down defensively a couple of times, especially the last goal. The guy just seems to... There was an opportunity to take the Aberdeen player out. A few players could have taken him out in the halfway line and stopped the ball getting into the Celtic box then. Fair enough, they've got a free kick they're going to throw in. We're defending a set piece then. It's different from open play. Performances have improved. Is it improved enough to suggest we're going to beat Lille?
Let's take the next two games. Is it improved enough for you, Lawrence, to fill you any kind of confidence that we're going to go into our next game on Thursday night and then, meet Aberdeen again and come through to those games with performances, but when it's a cup game, as it is on Sunday, with results? I mean, let's take the first game. We're going back to last year. We're looking at the group we were in last year. Rennes, Cluj, Lazio. We topped that group. 2 famous victories against an Italian club. We go into the game last Thursday on the back of a defeat. And, fair enough. We're chasing a 2-2 at the end of that game. Lawrence, and the aforementioned Frimpong hits a byline on one occasion. And if he finds a man, perhaps we've pulled it back to 2-2. And a big part of that was the fact that Milan did take the foot off the pedal, but I'm not taking away from the fact that there was an improved performance in the second half. And then the third goal was a sucker punch, wasn't it? Bad defensive display, which we're going to talk about. We're now going into this game against Lille, and all I hear at the moment is, let's focus on Sunday. It's almost as if we've written off Europe already. That's a bit sad for me as a Celtic fan, that when you compare it to last year, where we're topping a Europa League group, which was a strong group. This is a very strong group as well, don't get me wrong. You look at the Lille side, you look at how that's been made up and the cost to assemble that side. It's going to be a tough game. But it's almost as if we're already overlooking that game for Sunday.
I think perhaps it's not Sunday we're overlooking for. I think people are so focused on 10 in a row that if you to do a poll amongst the Celtic fans and say, would you take losing every game in a Europa League group, but still getting 10 in a row? I think everybody would go, oh yeah, I'd grab that just now. I think people are so focused on 10 in a row, which is why the pressure's so high on the manager just now and on the squad. You've touched on, fans not being at the ground is a kind of cathartic experience being at the ground. You get event there. Whether, you're helping the team or not, I think, that the venting's now spilling over to social media a lot.
Because of the release.
Yeah, it's a release. You're kind of disported elsewhere when you're at the game, aren't you? And it's a release for your frustrations, whether or not you are having an influence on the team. You certainly think you are, and you feel you're doing something.
You do feel that, in the big games, European games, you think back to Lazio last year and you think about, it doesn't always work. Copenhagen, it didn't work. It was, the fans were there, we were all behind the side, it didn't work then. But there are occasions where it just clicks, doesn't it? And you actually feel as though you're willing them on. But that atmosphere at Celtic Park is world renowned on European nights. That was lacking last week. Obviously, we didn't have that element. However big the margin is, it's difficult to quantify. But that is a way, and people are venting now on social media. I've seen a lot of the use of the word hysteria, Lawrence. Is there hysteria?
Well, I think there is, but I don't think all of it's hysteria. So, people are allowed to have kind of fair comments and measured comments, but I think there is a bit of hysteria on it, that we and it's, football's emotional for him, and Celtic's emotional, isn't it? It's in your heart, so it's hard not to be emotional about the club. For every supporter, whether, they're saying stick where we are or make the change. There is a bit about it, but it's not the sole thing about it, is it? It's things are very really black and white. So yeah, I think there's a bit of hysteria, but it's not the sole thing about it. Those other things that I think everybody acknowledges, whether they're saying change or not, that there's something not right at the club, and the club and the team aren't performing as we'd like them to do.
Well, we'll come back to that, Lawrence, because you and I have different views. And that's what I think a Celtic State of Mind does. I think there's a platform there whereby on a day-to-day basis on the bulletin, we have a different guest. You come in every Tuesday when you're able. Sometimes you can't, and that's fine. And then on a match day, we often have different guests. So by the end of the week, you've had 7 or 8 different views. And there's no narrative. No one tells you this is your view. It's your view. It's a genuine view. And you disagree with me and I disagree with Kevin, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? To open up some debate. We also have the fans there commenting on social media, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And it's great to get everybody involved. And I think we get a good cross-section of views. And we will come back to the question around Neil Lennon, our manager, our gaffer. But let's finish up with a look at the European game, because I do feel that there's a tendency at the moment to overlook anything in Europe. Was that anything to do with the Champions League knockout? Possibly there's an element of that. Is it more to do with the focus on the league title and 10 in a row? Now, there isn't just the prestige of winning a record-breaking 10th title in succession, Lawrence. There's also the small matter of the financial impact of not winning it. And I think that's obviously this week of all weeks when you're looking at the results, the financial results coming in. And thankfully people break these things down for people who maybe don't like the facts and the figures. Others who might have run businesses can glance at these things and understand it immediately. But what is clear from looking at that, and even with the chairman's statement at the end, is the massive implications of COVID. Everybody realises that it's going to have a huge impact on football. So when we're looking at the financial impact as well as the football aspect and the prestige of winning 10 in a row, it's absolutely monumental that Celtic win the league this season.
Yeah, you've touched on financial. So we're led to believe that our COVID insurance or business interruption policy is the best of any club in Scotland. I don't think that'll cover over into next season. That'll be... So... What does the Champions League bring? 20, 30 million? It's the football marketplace as a whole is going to have changed. What kind of fees will we get for players? what clubs are going to be left in a buying position. Across the world, COVID's having the impact. So player sales, I would say, is going to be. I think we're all thinking that Eddie might have been the first £40 million player to be sold from Scotland. I don't see it now the way the football market's going. I think transfer fees are going to drop on average or median, whatever way you want to look at it, is going to drop. Certainly, the big elite clubs that get all the TV money, may still have a lot to spend. Are the ones way back in like Man City, PSG, Real Madrid. They may still have fortunes to spend, but the clubs that we tend to have been selling to, I think their budget's going to have dropped. If we don't win 10, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, isn't it?
For any
or
twice
number of
for
reasons.
some
Celtic fans.
Yeah, well,
twice for some Celtic fans.
For some. For any number of reasons, Lawrence, not just the performance aspect of that, but how the landscape of football is going to pan out after the pandemic and what Scottish football is going to look like. So there's so many reasons. Yeah, once in a lifetime, I think it's safe to say that it most certainly will be. But again, looking at obviously the European aspect and the fact that, it's one eye on the league, one eye domestically. We all want to win another treble, and the Aberdeen game on Sunday is all about last season's treble.
Yep.
Unfinished business.
I think Lenny's come out and said, we need a performance. So I think that's all Europe is good for, trying to get performance out of the team. I think the fans would gladly give it up to keep the treble, and definitely would give it up to keep, to get 10 in a row. The Aberdeen game, it's going to be won or lost. We're 33, 34 domestic cup wins in the bounce, aren't we?
Oh, it's a huge number. I mean, to be honest with you, it's one of these ones that is one of the most remarkable aspects of the run is the cup run, because everybody knows you have a bad day, everybody knows we suffer from injury. We'll touch on that as well, Lawrence, when we're talking about this season. And to continually win cup games, one-off encounters, sometimes and difficult. You look at the run-up to this game, we've overcome teams like Clyde, that day at St Johnstone, McDermott Park in the rain, on a mucky, heavy pitch, 1-0, Ryan Christie. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, this game, and we will certainly be looking ahead to that. But again, I'm a bit saddened by the fact that, last season's European campaign, there was the whole Europa League momentum that was building up there, to the point where I felt we were going to get through against Copenhagen. This year, it's a bit of a damp squib. People are looking at that almost as a distraction.
I think they are. And I think we weren't going through as tough a time as a team and as a club. Things were coming easier, on the parties. I think people know we're struggling in the league. And I've not heard a lot of fans talking about keeping the cup run going, which is... It's an amazing run we've got so far. I think people have just said, look, the thing of paramount importance is 10 in a row and that we win the league. Everything else, it's a distant second.
Well, I would like to progress on Sunday like everybody else, and I think a big part of that, the work starts on Thursday. I said that last week as well. If you want to get a result against Aberdeen, what you're hoping to do is to build some momentum, right? You're also hoping to identify, because I think this is one of the biggest issues, the best formation to line up in, the best shape, and also the personnel. I was as surprised as everybody when the team line came out, because thankfully it didn't get announced on Friday night on a Celtic State of Mind this time round. But the team line was named for Sunday. Neil Lennon certainly tried to mix it up. Lawrence, what was the biggest surprise for you about the way we shaped up on Sunday?
Well, people are saying Lenny doesn't know his best team or his best formation. I think a lot is going to be governed by injuries at the moment. Mm-hmm. Not just injuries, but availability due to COVID. So I don't know if that falls into injuries. I think Brown been dropped. It's got to be the biggest surprise. Mm-hmm. I think it's got to be biggest. Barkas, when he collided with Duffy, you're thinking, was he broke or bruised a rib there? How long? I don't know. I've not heard anything about saying that he has. But if he has, it's going to take him a wee while to come back. So Bain coming in wasn't completely unsurprised, after watching the collision between Barkas and Duffy. I don't think Barkas has been dropped because of his performances. I think the stats at shots on target or something like, there's been 9 by the opposition, and then they've scored 8 over the last 3 games. So when you looked at Barkas on 2 of those 3 games, I don't think he's had a bad performance. So it's definitely down to injury, I would say, because he's not even on the bench. in that squad. But I think Brown being dropped was the big one. Griff's second. I would say Griff's still not been fit enough to start.
Although he was deemed fit enough against Milan
Yeah,
on the Thursday night. So was he dropped? I mean, I think that was more around the shape as well, Lawrence. He's come on, he scored the goal. And, you know, the celebration as well, it was, you know, let's get this done. It was rather that than the spontaneous celebration you would maybe expect. Again, he's come on twice in the last few weeks and scored 2 important goals for Celtic. He's shown us once again what he can do.
Yep. I think, yeah. Griff, with Eddie not being ready to start, Griff, you'd want Griff in your team, wouldn't you? You know, I'd want Griff and Ayeti ideally starting if Eddie's not fit. Well, obviously, Lenny's put him on the bench. He's come on and scored, so maybe Lenny's argument is, well, you know, he's come on and he's made a difference. You know, it's a striker that's scored, which is good because we need the goals. We're definitely lacking goals. You know, injury Forrest, I think we're really missing Jamesy big time for his assists and his goals and what he gives us on the right hand side. But I think Brown being dropped was probably the biggest surprise.
Well, let's talk about it because it's been spoken about obviously on social media as fans communicate massively on that platform, but also in the press. And someone who I think has the respect of many in the press is Michael Stewart, and he's been speaking about how to use Scott Brown effectively and how to rest him and when to rest him, I think, is what the important thing. I think going into a battle against Aberdeen at Pittodrie, it was a surprise to many of us, if not all of us, when Brown was rested for that game. I mean, was he that bad against Milan on Thursday night? I just felt that in a game like that where, you know, you've got Encham basically playing.
Yeah.
Brown is, you know, historically been one of the main men up at Pittodrie. And we keep harking back, yeah, you've got to play your best 11, of course you do, but he's the captain. He's the captain as well, so you lose a bit of that during the game because he's sitting on the sidelines like everybody else there, just watching the action. I was surprised, I think, when we predicted the team lines with Jim Orr on Friday, there was no question Brown starts. You know, you think of some of the games Brown could be rested in, Aberdeen would never be one of them. Does he come back in for Thursday night?
You think Aberdeen's the second hardest place to go in Scottish football, you know, Pittodrie, isn't it?
It's what?
The second hardest away game for us, I would say, would be Pittodrie.
Yeah, potentially.
So, yeah, it's just amazing that he get dropped. And I don't think it was bad enough against Milan. Maybe Lenny just wanted to try something different. He's thinking things aren't working. I really need to change things up. But for me, it wouldn't have been a game you'd have rested in.
No.
It might be, you know, your Motherwell, St Johnstone games are games you'd more expect him to be rested in. Does he come in against Lille? The team's really needing a performance. Lenny's trying to change things up. Does he save Brown for Aberdeen Cup game? Maybe that'll be on Lenny's mind, whether he plays against Lille. But so, what's Lenny thinking? For me, if I was picking a team, Scott Brown would be in there. I think we need his experience in Europe. Has Lenny, like a lot of Celtic fans said, well, Europe's kind of secondary here. Could he use this to try and sort out his team, try and get performance, try a formation that works and drop Brown? I would say it'd be the wrong thing to do. I'd have Scott Brown in the team.
When you look at the season as a whole, rather than just through this, you know, at the moment, the tunnel vision of game by game, which it seems to be at the moment, I think that's one of the biggest issues we have. There doesn't seem to be a bigger plan. A big part of that, Lawrence, is down to the fact that there's loads of players missing through illness and injury. And what I said today on Twitter in response to some criticism is that is merely a mitigating factor in what's been happening, because the nature of the performances, with and without those mentioned in terms of the injury list and those out with illness, have never been good enough this season. I mean, I keep asking people, give me your best 3 performances of the season. We've played every team once and we've played a number of European games, and people struggle to give me 3 full games. Again, this isn't a podcast today where I'm going to go over old ground, but I do think that when you're looking at that and you're looking at the fact we can't even give 3 brilliant performances this season, that's a concern beyond the injuries and beyond the illness. And in my responsive tweet today, it was in relation to the fact that, you know, there was a claim that Celtic's performances, you know, a big part of that was down to bad signings as well. Now, if that's the case, you're looking at who are we talking about here in reference to bad signings? And apparently, the bad signings is the fault of the head of recruitment. Now, if that's the case, there's a couple of questions there. Firstly, is the head of recruitment only responsible for the bad buys? Do we give Lenny the credit for the good ones? Who's responsible for bringing in Frimpong? I don't subscribe to that. It's a collective responsibility for players coming in. And also, it begs the question, Lawrence, when we go back to getting bounced out of the Champions League last season and the refusal to play Julien and Bolingoli, who were on the bench that night, and immediately thrown into the team the next week, by which time it was too late. £10 million worth of talent sitting on a bench in our biggest game of the season with Callum McGregor playing left back. Is that due to bad signings on the part of the head of recruitment and the gaffer saying I'm not playing them because they're not my signings? Because if so, there are deeper issues. And that's come from a very good source close to Neil Lennon, who tweeted that. And obviously I responded to it today.
I would say that recruitment, I think when the transfer window shut, and I didn't hear any complaints on it about any of the signings or the financial backing that the board had given the manager this year. I actually thought people felt that
they'd pushed the boat out.
Aye, we'd pushed the boat out. That boat may, have sunk and everybody may be at shore, but I think
it's not quite sunk yet.
I think everybody. I think the sport was, pleasantly surprised how much investment the board had put into the signings. Which signings have been bad this year? Duffy's had a few mistakes, but I think that's maybe reflective of the defence not playing well as a whole. Mm-hmm. Laxalt, he's only just in the door. I've not seen a bad performance from him.
No, not yet.
He's given his good goal return, isn't he?
Last couple of games, but again he's coming back from injury. Yep. Lawrence, on a whole, I think we were raving about Ayeti fairly recently, and that doesn't change. I don't change from one to the. You're looking at 3 signings from EPL sides. You're looking at someone from AC Milan who has, starred on the world stage for Uruguay. You're looking at Scotland's brightest prospect. You're looking at Celtic's most expensive goalkeeping signing. Yeah. That was a decent window. Yeah,
Barkas is a wee bit of criticism, but I think unfairly, I think Barkas he's not had a lot to do. He looks good with the ball at his feet. His distribution's been good. Turnbull we've not seen a lot of. I don't think, looking at the recruitment and the investment that the board's given, I think this has been a better window than most for us.
I find it, personally, based on what we've just done there, having a quick look at the signings, I think it's a tactic of deflection if you're simply going to say it's all down to bad signings, it's all down to injury, it's all down to illness. It's not.
Though, everything's a cumulative effect, but on signings, I would say that the Celtic board and the head of recruitment's done a better job than they've done. The terms
Were
of
you
financial
confident coming out yet, Lawrence?
Definitely.
The transfer window?
But I think everyone in the Celtic sport was. I think everybody was shocked. We're actually pushing the ball out. Look at the amount of money we're spending. We're buying people to slot into the first team. We're not buying projects. Would we call David Turnbull a project? I don't know. He's a seasoned SPL pro. I know he's young. He's a seasoned SPL pro. We know he can do it.
He's a heady sorrow in the pecking order, I would say. So, what do you reckon?
I wouldn't say he was a project.
No.
He is a seasoned
first team
SPL
player,
pro.
absolutely.
So, I think everyone across the Celtic sport said, look, actually the club's shown great ambition here and we've been doing what we've been crying out for. We stopped with the projects and we're sending first team starters.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the window shut, I think that was more, unanimously, that was more or less unanimously across the Celtic support said, we've had a good transfer window.
It just concerns me gravely when someone close to Neil Lennon is blaming the head of recruitment. And then I start looking at other signings that have come in under Lennon's tenure, and the one thing that springs to my mind is the failure to play £10 million worth of talent last season against Cluj. Is that because that was down to the head of recruitment rather than Neil Lennon? If so, that's fairly concerning, even though we know the whole makeup of a signing in football these days, it isn't solely down to the manager. He might identify some players, and it was the same first time round as well. Players are presented to the gaffer. The players are presented to the man who has the last say in whether or not that player is signed.
It's not always been the case. There's scouts out there. we need people at games. Lenny can't go to all the games that Celtic we need to unearth gems like, whether it's a Van Dijk or Wanyama or whoever. So it's always been collective, the signings, but the head of recruitment, I think, has done a cracking job. And by and large, I don't know what kind of success we are looking for from players, but I think most of those signings are going to be good signings for Celtic and have proved to be so far.
The big thing as well, people may say, well, how can you say give the players time if you're saying don't give Neil Lennon any more time? I think the player, when you're looking at the personnel and you're looking at the squad, the wider squad, Lawrence, I think we've got what we need to get us through this season, to get us 10 in a row, to ensure that we continue domestically as we have done. Europe is a completely different question this season, as we've already discussed, but I think we do have the personnel. I think Celtic have played as a dysfunctional team this season. I think that's the best way to describe them. The team line comes out, you don't know from one week to the next who's going to be playing, what shape we're going to be playing in. I'm not ready to write off Shane Duffy, I'm not ready to write off Barkas at this stage.
Duffy, he's had dental surgery, he's played in a lot more games than he's used to, in a short period of time. And he doesn't know, I don't suppose he knows the defensive line up for 1 week to the next, whether that's injury or team selection or formation. It's cumulative of all three, isn't it?
Yeah, he'd have been rested before now, Lawrence. If we had Beaton, El Hamid and Julian fit, he'd have been rested because of some of his performances. You might have taken him out for a couple of games.
Well, you might have had Julian and Duffy as your centre half, Ayer at right back, and Laxalt at left back, and it might have, things might have been different with that kind of defence.
I'm going to ask you about your team and how you're thinking about that. Are you going to approach a predicted team, Lawrence, with Aberdeen in mind in terms of, well, I'm just going to park Europe to one side this season because I think that's maybe the way you're going? Or do you say, well, in order for us to get a performance against Aberdeen, let's try and pick the team and play them against Lille and try and get that understanding, particularly in the defence?
I think we've got to pick the defence that's going to face Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Going forward, I'm not too sure if he'll rest midfield or forwards, but I think we've got a bit more. We've definitely got more options in midfield, more fit options. So that's stuff that we can justify moving about. But the defence needs to get settled and needs to get settled soon.
So I think looking ahead to Thursday, and a lot of this will need to be confirmed in terms of fitness, but it looks as though Barkas is going to miss a couple of games. So you start with Bain.
Yeah, you've got to start with Bain.
And then, is it a back four you're going to go for? Are you going to stick with the three? How do you work it? Because you've already said you don't think Duffy kind of suits the back three.
Yeah, I don't think he's got the passing ability or consistent passing accuracy to be the spare man in a back three, which you need all three of them.
You've got Julien, that's what Julien's job is. Exactly. You can give the ball to Julien. He's got the passing. Yep. And I think he's probably missing the luxury of having somebody like that who can spray the passes around.
Ayer can do it, Julian can do it. And if you had a third one that could do it, you can go, right, let's go back three. And the SPL would probably get away with him not being able to pass and being able to lay it off to Ayer and Julian, because it gives you two options. Just now in the back three, it's been Ayer. I would probably go with a back four if possible, and it's going to depend who's fit. Diego at left back.
Would you? No Taylor?
No.
Taylor was someone you stood up for all season, Lawrence.
I really like Taylor.
He's been taken out of the team and we've not performed in the 3 games that he's missed.
He's got great stats for us, but Diego's shown enough in I think it's an United Aberdeen game that we need to settle the defence soon. And I think Europe's maybe a bit of a luxury for us this season, that we've got a chance to put in a defence that let's try and get some understanding before Aberdeen. Mm-hmm. So drop Diego in. Who's going to be fit? Because I'd like to try Ayer at right back, and ideally, I'd like Beaton and Julian as the centre halves, but who's going to be fit for us?
Well, the talk after the game around maybe El Hamid coming back in for the game, we'll need to wait and see, obviously, with any updates over the next couple of days. But again, in terms of a right back, it would certainly solidify that area of the park. Frimpong for me is an offensive player. I've said it so many times on here. And if you're going to go over there against a side like Lille and not have that solid back line, and that has been suspect over a number of weeks, Lawrence, then it could get to a stage where it's going to be quite an embarrassing result. So I think it is important to shore up the back line. Yep. And, El Hamid's a defender first and foremost.
So, yeah, if it's depending on fitness, isn't it? If it's going to have to be Ajer and Duffy again, it'll have to be Ajer and Duffy. Who are we going to have fit at centre-half to play? Right back, for me, it's just not Frimpong. I think we're developing him as a right back. We've touched on it. His distance from the centre-halves and the position he takes too high up the pitch, I think, for a right back. Perhaps for a right wing back his positioning's right, but even then I think he's too high up the park and too far away from whoever the centre half is he should be next to. So I don't think it's a game for Frimpong.
He's done well in Europe.
Yeah, I would say he beats players and he looks good. I'm not too sure on his final ball either with Frimpong. What he gets, I think he needs to start weighing in more in terms of assists. But he's a young player we're developing. If every young player came in and was a finished article, well, I don't think he'd be at Celtic, would he? When he got hold of him. So we need to develop him, and I don't think the next two games are the games to do that in. I think we need to solidify that back line and start getting, a performance of results. I think we need. The manager said, we need a win again, a performance and a win. Certainly, for me, a performance against Lille would do, as long as we get the win against Aberdeen at the weekend and keep the cup run going.
Yeah, because you just can't write off any games, Lawrence. This is my point, because in order to get the momentum running, in order to get the understanding between partnerships on the park, every game for me is important to the next. So if you're looking ahead to Aberdeen, Lille is very important for that. The lineup that I, at the moment, will go for, and this changed about 3 or 4 times leading up to the Rangers game for obvious reasons, is Bain in goals. It would be Barkas. I would let him, continue to try and develop a partnership at the back, rather than drop him. But Bain would be getting the jersey due to any injury of Barkas. I'd bring Taylor back in at left back. I would be playing El Hamid at right back with Duffy and Ajer in the centre. And again, looking to Duffy's experience to come through the patch that he's currently in, which is far from impressive, but I think he's got enough about him. He's got the experience to come through it, Lawrence.
Yep.
And I think that with the back four, it might suit him a wee bit better on Thursday night. I would still play Brown and McGregor in my engine room, with Frimpong more of a right winger and Laxalt more of a left winger. Christie and Griffiths up top. Christie not playing up front as such, but Kenny playing off Griffiths. And I think Griffiths gets the jersey from Ayeti based on the performance at the weekend. That's the way I would line up.
Midfield, I would maybe go. I think I'd put 2 in front of defence.
Brown and McGregor.
I like to try and push McGregor up a wee bit and maybe put Brown and Turnbull in there. There's something not working in midfield as well, isn't there? And we've got the luxury of moving that about. If we can get Celtic back line, Brown, Turnbull, and I'd start with Griff up top, and then I'd have 3 behind Griff. I'd have Frimpong on the right.
You've still got Christie and McGregor.
I know. Yeah, and Christie and McGregor, yeah.
Yep. It's the balance, actually, when you're looking at that lineup against Aberdeen on Sunday there. It was a balance of that. There were so many creative players started that game for Celtic, and it was sometimes difficult actually to see how it was going to work. If you've got El Yunusi, you've got Ncham, Christie, Logic, all in the same, playing in the same midfield areas. So I found that difficult. I think that this would give us more balance. So I'm going for Bain, El Hamid, Taylor, Duffy, Ajer, Brown, McGregor, Frimpong, Laxalt, Christie and Griffiths. If we had a fully fit team, a fully fit complement of stars, what changes they're making there? That's an interesting, Julian comes back in. At this moment in time, if he was fit, he would be playing ahead of Duffy simply based on performances. Edouard would start any game for me, even though he's off form at the moment. I just think he's got something that can change a game, Lawrence, that nobody else, and I include Griffiths in this. The way that Edouard has regressed this season. I don't think it's a permanent thing. I really don't. I just think it's a loss of form. Obviously, he's been ill. It might take some time for him to come back in. I think he might be in the squad. From what we've heard, that he might be in the squad. But again, you need to just build that back up and put him back in. Griffiths probably felt a bit aggrieved getting dropped after Thursday night. I don't think he played tremendously well, but it was part of his own recovery and comeback, isn't it? And then he's back on the bench. He's come and scored a goal. I think he deserves the jersey. Yet he was particularly poor against Aberdeen, but I think, again, it doesn't suit him to play as a lone striker. Griffiths can play a lone striker, or he can play as part of a partnership up there. That's how I'm going to start on Thursday night. Let's go on back to some of the comments coming through. Stuart McDay started off by telling us to get positive. Scott Graham, what's there to be positive about? We're awful. What we've got positive to be positive about, I think, would be, as a collective, we still have a very, very strong squad. And I take on board that we've got illness and injury at the moment, and there are all going to come back for us, Lawrence, and obviously that's going to improve and strengthen the starting 11. Of course it is. I mean, just having El Hamid back makes picking that team a lot easier straight away.
Well, how fit's El Hamid going to be? Is he definitely back? For me, I'd definitely like to try Ayer at right back if we had everyone fit, and try Julian and Duffy in the middle of that, and Diego at left back. But yeah, El Hamid's a lot more solid defensively in Frimpong, isn't he? I just can't
play a two of them.
I don't think we can persevere with Frimpong at right back or right wing back just now. The team's struggling. I think he is weak defensively.
So you play him as, well, I'm playing him as one of the three behind the striker.
Yeah,
that's where I'm playing him.
But I just don't think we can persevere with him at right back or right wing back. I think we do need, that's a change that definitely needs to be made.
You need somebody behind him, Lawrence.
Yeah.
I mean, even against Aberdeen, this isn't an opportunity for me to criticise Frimpong, but against Aberdeen, when we were breaking and then Aberdeen countered, you were actually waiting for Frimpong to come onto the screen, and sometimes he didn't even appear on that screen because he was so far up the park. If you've got him as part of the three behind Griffiths, Laxalt, Frimpong give you good balance on the left and right, with Christie in the middle. Christie is the most creative player that we've got at the club, and he's going to create chances on Thursday night as well. So I believe that Frimpong stays in the team, but we need to play to his strengths.
He's definitely learning the defensive side, and I think it's too weak to kind of persevere with him just now. So yeah, it's the change that needs to, definitely one of the changes that needs to be made.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Now some of the other comments coming in. Alex Hayden, here's an interesting one. The club needs support, but after Sunday, I've lost all faith in Lennon taking us forward. We have been turgid all season and need either technical coaches brought in or Lennon out and a new manager in. So Alex, thanks for getting involved. You're commenting on YouTube. Anybody who is watching on YouTube, get involved, absolutely, but also subscribe, because we've got massive amounts of content coming out already, Lawrence. We've got even more coming. There's other Celtic State of Mind shows being developed that we can start recording in the studio. So there's going to be loads more content. It's all free on a Celtic State of Mind. And I said this morning as well, it's also a podcast. So the podcast is available later on in the day. You find that on iTunes and on Spreaker and Acast and all the other places that you find your podcasts on. And we're currently sitting nicely in the top 20 of the official iTunes UK chart, Lawrence, which is brilliant, because the podcast is where it all started, and that's something that we're still passionate about. But it's great to be in there, because you're actually in there in amongst the big boys, really. You're in there with the likes of Arsenal, Manchester City, Man United. All their official podcasts are in there, in the higher echelons of the chart. So it's great to be in there. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in.
I think the viewer or contributor, whatever, makes a good point on technical coaches. The club's obviously brought in Gavin Strachan.
Yes.
And if we break that down the park into, I suppose, goalkeeping, defence, midfield, and forwards.
Well, no one's ever got any concerns with Stevie Woods as a goalie coach.
Yeah,
look at the work he's done.
We think we've got the keeper covered.
Yeah.
Do we have a defensive coach? Do we have a midfield coach? And do we have a forward coach? Now, John Kennedy's there, but I think you've said Peter Law said he's not the defensive coach.
He's not a defensive coach. That's not his sole responsibility, is not to coach the defenders.
So Who is? I don't think we have one, do we?
And by the way, Peter didn't tell me that because I don't have contact with Peter Lawwell. Before anybody thinks that I do, I certainly do not. That was actually brought up, and I think it was a fans forum, which I wasn't there, but Kevin Graham was there, and it was confirmed we don't have a specific defensive coach.
So I don't think we've got a midfield coach, and we don't have a forward coach. And I think it's three positions that Stevie Woods has done brilliant with goalkeepers. Would it not work with defenders? Would it not work with midfielders? Would it not work with forwards? Larsson's at Barcelona is the forward coach, isn't he?
Ah, we missed the boat.
Well, we could bring in Big John. I mean, we definitely don't win enough in the air. Big Hartson's got to be able to teach people how to win stuff in the air. You would hope.
It all depends, I think, on the larger issues that Mark raised. And, it's something we've spoken about all week, Lawrence. I made my views known. My own personal views known on the situation, and I explained why I feel that change is necessary. And even this morning, people disagree with that, and that's all right. Disagree, that's no problem, that's fine. Criticise even, but the abuse side of things, that's unacceptable in any walk of life, and that's not something that anybody should ever accept. Simply because someone has a different view, it doesn't make me any less of a Celtic fan than you, because I think that it's time up and you don't. They're all Celtic fans.
I think you're going down the fascist route there if you're not allowed to disagree.
We're all Celtic fans, Lawrence. Exactly.
You can down that route. But I think, cracking point, we should have technical coaches. We've brought Gavin Strachan in. Could we replicate in other three areas of the pitch what Stevie Woods does?
I tell you, we'd be doing well if we did, because his record's been excellent since he came in at Celtic, isn't it? So
I think it's something there the club should be looking at. We should be looking at getting a forward coach, a midfield coach, and a defence coach in. And, for me, I'd grab Big Hartson. I think, he's on record saying he'd walked to Celtic Park to get that job.
He did, he did. The question was raised when we were allowed back in the day, Lawrence, to do question and answer sessions in public, and people were able to actually be in the same room as each other. And the question was raised about, working with Lenny, because he speaks so passionately about Neil Lennon, which is understandable. And he says, he would walk on broken glass to Celtic Park to coach. And I don't think the striker's an issue at the moment. I really don't. I think we've got 4 strikers. One's not available for inclusion at the moment. But I think it is a defensive issue, which, by the way, once we get the personnel back, that might sort it.
Yeah, it might evaporate. Just because it's not manifesting itself as an issue, that I think contributes, right? We would benefit by having specialist coaches in these areas, specialist technical coaches. And maybe it'll also benefit Lenny the fact that he is friends with Hartson. It'd be one of his backers coming in, one of his own team, so to speak. So I think it's something that the club should be looking at, putting that structure in place.
Well, again, you mentioned last week, and you got a bit of flack for it, but I'll mention it anyway, Lawrence, because we're pals, about getting the gang back together. I guess that there was quite a good cross-section there when you look at the old team that Lenny had with Mjallby, Thompson, and you had Lenny's a midfielder, and you've got the kind of forward offensive player in Thompson, you've got the defensive player in Mjallby. I am not for a moment saying we need to get them back, because I don't think that's the case at all. But, for some balance, and I do have some concerns, I've got to say, about the kind of fragmented nature of the coaching setup at the moment. And it is difficult due to the restrictions anyway for them to be, this kind of egg, as it were, and nothing is able to get into that other than the 3. I think that there seems to be a bit of a breakdown there with regards to the staff, and it's almost as if there's 3 individuals rather than a collective.
Definitely appears that way. It's part of it that they're not Lenny's people. I think part of it is, one of them's new in. What's he going to bring? It takes a while to establish working relationships, doesn't it? It'll take a while for his coach and Strachan's coach and whatever he's teaching the players to manifest itself on the park. He's not just going to come in and change things overnight,
and also replace someone who was particularly popular.
Yep.
And Damien Duff.
Yeah, so hopefully Strachan, if he's anywhere near as good a coach as his father was, I think that'll be a positive move for the club. But there does seem to be something amiss within the coaching team. What it is, we don't know, but there definitely seems to be something not working well.
the DJ of choice, who comments fairly regularly on this, so welcome back. And you are talking about Barkas should start on Thursday. I think the reason I didn't pick him, actually, I wasn't dropping him because I agree, I would still pick Barkas, but I think he's still injured for Thursday, is he not?
I think he might be. I mean, that was some collision with him and Duffy, yeah. And I'd be worried he might be out for a while. I don't know what the injury is, but it looked like, like it could be a bruised or a broken rib or something, so that would take a number of weeks to heal. So I would have Barkas in front of Bain, yep, but Scott Bain,
I think he's
an
a good
able
backup.
deputy.
He's a good backup, without a doubt. But there is a point following on from that, saying that people are too quick to roast him. But he has better stats than Foster or Gordon in his first 12 games. And what I'm just looking for at the moment is I did have a list of stats in relation to goalkeepers, which I just can't put my finger on at the moment. But you're absolutely right. The stats for some of the goalkeepers you would expect, within their first dozen games, if you like, aren't as impressive as you would expect. So yes, it does take time for goalkeepers to settle. Of course it does. And I think that we do have the right man in Barkas. I think a lot of the early criticism on the goalie was unfair. And, we stood up for him on this podcast when it was coming from some of the mainstream channels, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Fraser Forster's a better keeper than Barkas. I don't think he's good with his feet, but as a shot stopper, from what I've seen of Barkas, I think Forster's better. But that ship sailed, and that was Forster's decision, not Celtic's decision. I think Barkas looks as if he's going to be a good goalkeeper for Celtic, and yeah, I'd put him ahead of Bain if he was fit.
Here we go then. All right, this is the first 13 games, just to share it with some of you for a wee bit of light entertainment. First 13 games, goals conceded by Celtic goalkeepers in their first 13 games for the club. Pat Bonner, 14. Fraser Forster, 11. Rab Douglas, 10. Carol Muggleton, 9. And Arthur Boric, 7. So there you go. Sometimes stats do lie.
Well, but Muggleton set a shutout record.
He did.
Didn't he? It was 5 or 6 games or something.
I'm not comparing Muggleton to Barkas. Come on, stop it. We'll stop that right now.
Sorry, I'm just thinking back to Macari's days. There were tough times when you compare that to where we are now. Going for 4th and 5th treble, 10 in a row.
This is where, again, Lawrence, the minute you've got an opinion that doesn't match with all singing, all dancing, with regards to Celtic and, keep the faith, which I love the expression, keep the faith. I love the fact that, it was adopted by the Northern Soul scene as well as anything else. And obviously Celtic have adopted it. And I do love that. And I do keep the faith. But I don't keep the blind faith, Lawrence. That's the one big thing. I don't keep blind faith.
No, I think everyone's got to be measured. It's... I think we all support Neil Lennon and want him to do well. People are going to have different opinions on his ability. Doesn't mean that you're going to offer him less support, does it?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
It's
I've supported every single Celtic manager in my lifetime. Yep. I've supported every manager. There are some that I agree with. There's some that I don't agree with. But I've supported every Celtic manager, and some of them, as you say, when you hark back to the bad old days, they weren't great managers. Now, Red Scotland, Barkas is a decent keeper. Duffy needs a settled back four to play with so that Julien and Aya can do his running and he can do the rough stuff. The rest need integrated. We need to step it up. I think when you're looking at that, I think Duffy came in because Neil Lennon fancied the three at the back. And I think there's been a change in plan there. So if and when Julien gets fit before the turn of the year, and I hope he does because he's been sent away to Germany for some surgery, hasn't he, on his back? Yep. When that actually happens, it might not be a back three. So you're maybe picking two from the three. And we're then looking at our fullbacks. The fullbacks, we're quite slim on the right-hand side. We've got El Hamid. Ayer, as you say, can cover there. You're then moving to the realms of Ralston if you don't include Frimpong. Yep. If you don't include Frimpong as a right back.
Yep.
Left back, again, we don't have great options because of the ball and golly situation. So you've got Taylor, like Salt can play there, although he looks more of an offensive player.
To be honest, I think that's two international left backs. I think that is two great options we've got. I think we're stronger at left back than we are at right back.
Yeah.
But what's below them, those two, is maybe not as strong. But I think that now that we've got Diego in, you've got Taylor, whose stats have been impressive. I think he's a decent left back, defensively very sound. there's a lot of criticism. Well, he doesn't beat a man often enough. His crossing's not good enough. But yeah, for me, I think he's a good left back. So Diego's looked good when he's come in.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I've been very impressed with what I've seen, and it's not been an ideal start for him when you look at the 3 games that he's appeared in, Lawrence. So I would hope for a victory for him and for the rest of us as well. My man says 67, welcome back. You're commenting on YouTube to say that Lennon, let's have a wee think back to when Lennon was 15 points behind and 3-0 down to Kelly. The rest is history. There were other aspects of that. I mean, I'm a massive romanticist. I wouldn't say a historian. I love the Celtic history and I study it and research it regularly, Lawrence. There were other aspects at play that season, granted, but yeah, he's admitted himself at half-time, 3-0 down, that his job was on the line, and he says that to the players at the time.
Yeah, I mean, even go back to when he Ross County semi-final, when he was caretaker, I was surprised that after that result, he got the job. But he did, he's went on and he's been successful for us as a manager. He's turned things round in the past. We all want him to turn it round again.
We do.
While he's still in position, I think everyone would give him 100% support in turning it around. The support's different from whether or not you think a change needs to be made.
No, you're right. I'm not going to stop supporting Celtic if I disagree with who plays right back or who's in charge or who the CEO is. I support Celtic first and foremost, and everything else comes and goes. The fans never do. But when it comes to my view on the situation, and my man says bringing up some great memories of that comeback at Rugby Park, I don't think this Neil Lennon is the same Neil Lennon. I really don't. And what I mean by that is, as an individual, as a manager, I'm looking at Neil Lennon and I've seen loads of concerns in relation to, some of the shots we've seen of his demeanour, even when we scored a goal to go 3-2 up against Aberdeen, and the lack of bite from that. You've also got to take that into account. You've got to take into account, Lawrence, the effect that this is having on Neil Lennon. Now, whether or not, it is having an effect, that there's going to be a pressure, there's going to be stress and anxiety and all of these things associated with that. We know that Neil Lennon has suffered previously and possibly currently with mental health issues, and I take all of that into consideration. So I think, when you're looking at the situation, that is one of the massive factors you also need to consider, and whether or not, he's in a position to turn it around, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a saying, you never meet the same man twice. We know Lenny's had these struggles. Sometimes, managers have a shelf life. I think Gordon Strachan said he reckons it's 3 years. Even Celtic as a club, when you look back to Jock Stein, they decided, that time is up for Big Jock, didn't he? Can Lenny turn it around? Is he going through is he suffering troubles again? Maybe he is suffering troubles again, and that will have an effect on his ability to do the job or not, or how he performs in the job. Listen, if we beat Lille and we beat Aberdeen, it would go a long way to getting kind of the season back on track, wouldn't it? It'd certainly keep the 4th treble in a row on track. But yeah, Lenny's struggling, as is the team. I think we all hope that he can turn it around. We'd all give him every support in trying to turn it around. And it's not going to be down to us. It's going to be down to, I suppose, Dermot Desmond and Peter Lawwell. And if they do decide to make a change, it's when do you make the change and who do you bring in?
And how is it made? How is it made? Because changes can be made without, everything that would surround a sacking. The changes can be made in different ways, Lawrence. If indeed that would be bad for Neil Lennon, that would be a priority. In my mind, it would be a priority in those in the highest echelons of Celtic Park. So any change that needs to be made needs to be thought out in various different ways. And a big part of that is Neil Lennon.
So if Celtic have a manager that's suffering from illness at the moment, I think that's what you're saying, it's having an impact.
I'm not saying that.
Or it's a possibility.
The Neil Lennon that I look at on the sidelines for Celtic isn't the same Neil Lennon that I would expect to see even from last season.
So it's a possibility that he may be suffering from illness again. That's could be
all
part
I'm
of it,
saying
couldn't
is
it?
there's a lot of stress on Neil Lennon
without
in
doubt.
this season. I'm not for a moment speculating that he's suffering from mental illness.
Right. So
But
I think
you've got to consider
it's
all
a
of these
possibility.
aspects.
And if it is, I'd expect Celtic would be giving him every support that they could.
I'm sure they will.
How the change would be made if they were to make a change, I think they would still look after Lenny. I don't think it would be, whether a change is made because of illness or just performances or just they think that his time's up
of all
or
of
a
these
combination of everything. I think they would, as a club, they would still look after Lenny. How the change would be made and who you bring in, it's going to be who's going to be available. Are you bringing them into the end of the season? Are you, would it be a temporary change just now? Well, that would depend on the reason why the change would be made. If it's a combination of everything and you just think Lenny's reached the end of the road, as a Celtic manager, then that's different from if you just kind of want to give a bit extra support in the role. And could it be like someone like, I think Kev Tate for the penalty spot said, suggested Strachan come in and give him a hand? Could it be someone come in just to give him a hand to get him over this patch? Could it be, maybe we do look at bringing in a director of football or, other coaches, maybe experienced football managers, but bring them in as defensive coaches, midfield coaches. There's options open to the club, isn't there?
It depends on what the very specific issues are. And there obviously are a number when you look at what we know, not what anybody's speculating, Lawrence, what we know as Celtic supporters in terms of undermining the manager by flying to Spain during, exactly, right? So Bolingoli coming back from pre-season unfit in relation to Griffiths, the leaks. So players apparently, according to Neil Lennon, who don't want to be at the club, which was part of his post-match interview after the Ferencváros game, kind of backtracked a wee bit on that, probably after being spoken to by other people at Celtic Park. So there's other issues, no speculation. A lot of people hear you talking about issues. The issues are there for all to see. It's not as though anybody is saying, we're in the know, we're not telling you. These are the things that everybody knows has been happening this season.
He's definitely got a lot on his plate, hasn't he? And some of the players haven't helped him with it. Why that is, I don't know. Have they lost respect for the manager? There's a saying, if you lose the dressing room, Lenny, you can only manage by consent. It's a lot of things in society, policing's by consent, government's by consent. If he has lost the dressing room and they no longer respect him and are willing to carry out what he asked them to carry out, whether that's turning up fit, or it's, obeying the law in relation to COVID, whether it may come down to carrying out his instructions on the pitch.
Well, the big thing for me in A Celtic State of Mind, it's all about sharing views and opinions, but we all have the same goal in mind, Lawrence, and that goal is obviously to continue on this incredible domestic run that we've been on for the last 9 years. And, everything that we say isn't to disrupt anything. It's not to agitate. But if there is an issue, and we've seen it in the past with regards to managers where it's just not working, it needs to be resolved. And I'm pretty sure, and I think this is what I said, if there is a plan in place for post-Lennon, then, it may not be possible to bring that forward to now and for that to be an interim situation. So there's a lot to consider in what would happen between now and the end of the season if any change was made. It would be an interim situation rather than the permanent one.
I think any business has got to kind of have their plans in place for the future, but they've also got to have emergency plans in place as well. These are things that I think the people that run in Celtic should have. What if plans? What if this happens? What if we need to make a change? They won't be doing it on the back of a 5-pack on a whim, will they? There'll have been some kind of thought and right, if we need to change, this is what we'll be looking for. This is what we need. If it is, if Lenny sees out the season and they decide, that's time to move on with, a whole different change kind of in the coaching and the structure and the management of the club, there may be already a plan in place for that. Could it be, some of the loss of, if there is a loss of respect, would it be like a lame duck president, people knowing that his days are numbered? there's a lot of factors at play, isn't there? You know?
Oh, there certainly is. Now, we do get contacted on the live broadcast, Lawrence, but also beyond that, and we got a really great email from Dennis Doherty from Mandurah in Western Australia, a big Celtic fan, who I bumped into back in 2017 at one of the Celtic Graves commemorations for Joe Dodds. And it was great to get an email from him. And I showed you that today, some brilliant points in there. But it's going to take a wee bit longer to expand on some of the points, Dennis. So we will be introducing that and some of the aspects of your email to a wider audience at some point over the next few days. We're looking at Thursday night. We're looking obviously at the shape. I think we've both agreed, Lawrence, that we need to try and shore it up with, changing from the back three. And as soon as you do that, the whole shape of the rest of the team obviously changes. But Chris Sutton was looking at, former Celt Chris Sutton was looking at the strikers, and he was looking at the fact that obviously some of the strikers he feels were letting the side down as well. I've started with Griff up there. I'm hoping that Edouard's back on the bench. I'm not going to write off Barkas, and I'm not going to write off Ayeti. Why would I? I mean, these two guys have been quality signings for Celtic, and although Ayeti played poorly, I feel, against Aberdeen. So when I'm looking up front, I actually think that we're healthy up front, we're healthy in midfield, and the only concerns that I have is with the defensive issues, which obviously have been compounded by all the injuries. But when it comes to Chris Sutton's comments about strikers, I don't have any concerns about our strikers.
No, I think Griff's coming back from injury. You know, he's had these troubles as well. Ayeti's been a good signing. Eddie's got the most potential any player at the club, I'd say. You know, we've got Paddy. He's a fourth choice striker. He should be okay for, games in the SPL, shouldn't he? But when called upon, his fourth choice. I think we're well covered. I think the recruitment in the striking departments, what's there for the manager to pick for is definitely good.
There's a lot of talk actually on the live broadcast, Lawrence, around other potential managers, and I just think at this stage, nothing's going to happen right now. Nothing's going to happen in that respect. That's the kind of feeling I'm getting from Celtic Park. I think the next two games, though, are vital. I was criticised at half-time against Aberdeen for saying that Neil Lennon had 45 minutes to save his job. I was criticised heavily for that. And when I'm looking at that, what would have been the situation had we not pulled that back and then obviously lost the lead? It would have been a situation, Lawrence, where we would have lost 3 games in a row for the first time since 1994.
Yep.
Now, when you say he's got 45 minutes to save his job, it's not based on the Aberdeen result. It's not even based on the 3 results that I'm talking about, Rangers, Milan and Aberdeen. It's based on the dysfunctional nature of Celtic's team all season.
Yep.
That's what it's based on. It's based on the fact that for some reason, even though we've strengthened the personnel, the team looks worse than it did last season. Now, we've got the normal progression of certain players getting to certain ages, but other than, Scott Brown, we don't have many players, if any others, over the age of 30. We've got some players who are 28, such as Shane Duffy and Tom Rogic, but we've got a fairly young squad. So I don't subscribe to the fact that a year on, we're all of a sudden a worse team who have regressed. I don't think it's the personnel who have regressed. I think it's the way that the coaching staff have changed, and that includes Neil Lennon. And, I think we're going to be sitting here next week on Tuesday next week, Lawrence. We've got 2 further games under our belt by that stage, and this is a discussion, if the performances and the results don't improve, that we're going to have again.
Yeah, I think if there's not so much the result on Thursday, I think we need the performance then. But the cup game's all about the result, isn't it? If we get the wrong result then, that's the domestic cup run gone. That's the 4th treble in a row gone. It puts a different complexion and stuff, doesn't it? And I think I'm not so worried about Europe this season, but then you're looking and going, well, that's domestic. It's 3 big challenges we've had, and if we haven't won any of them if we don't beat Aberdeen in a cup game. And I think that's now a massive game for Lenny. What I've seen in the last 2 games against Milan and Aberdeen, I think the performances had improved. versus the previous game. Hopefully, the team can continue improvement in performances. We've got some players coming back in now that are returning to the team that are definitely, even I think Tom Rogic, you know, against Milan, when he came on, he looked good. You know, you could see what we were missing. He's got a bit of trickery. He was linking up well with Christie. We're starting to get options back, aren't we?
Well, with the returning players, that's exactly what we're going to be faced with, Lawrence. And that was the reason why we were shouting for Griffiths and Rogic to get back into the squad.
Yep.
For options. And by the way, we're now at a situation where a couple of injuries down the line, a couple of players missing through illness, and we need Rogic and Griffiths. And a few weeks back, you know, we were actually looking at a situation where Griffiths was nowhere to be seen and Rogic was talking about leaving the club.
Yeah, Rogic, I think the word was he was unhappy with his game time, and it looked as if he'd been sold for £4 million.
Yeah.
And then it comes on against Milan. He's one of the bright spots in that game, shall we say.
He was, aye. And then on Sunday, I mean, I listened to Neil Lennon's comments after the game and he praised Rogic to the hilt. I thought he was fairly anonymous, but he set up 2 of the goals, so you can't criticise him.
2 assists.
He got 2 assists. And I'll tell you what, if you're going to have a player, you know, creating 2 goals every game he plays, but
that's
again,
a bad game for you, 2 assists. Yeah.
I know. But I don't have him in my starting lineup because it's all about shape. I think it's all about getting a balance on Thursday night. And Christie is the man for me who will sit in behind Griffiths. But I mean, he feeds. You noticed that even at the weekend there, he feeds Laxalt and he feeds Frimpong.
Yeah.
You know, he's all over the park there, and he's obviously looking to create for the striker as well.
He definitely brings an energy, doesn't he?
He does.
He's relentless for the time he's on the park, doesn't he? It's just non-stop. And I think we need players in there that keep the rest of the teammates going, keep the ball moving. Because, you know, at times we are too ponderous as a team, we're too slow to build, and I think Ryan keeps the momentum in the team, doesn't he?
He certainly does. And, you know, he was one of the players, along with Ayer, that Celtic fans were of the view that may be agitating for a move. Neil Lennon came out after the Ferencváros game talking about players who were pushing for moves away from Celtic Park, that didn't want to be there. They're 2 of our best performers at the moment.
I would say both. I mean, I think we've always known Ayer's going to move on. I think Christie fancies a crack at the EPL. I don't see any problem with players if that's what they want. But when they're on the park, I've never seen either of them give less than 100%, which is all we can ask the players, to give us everything they have when they play. It's, you know, if their ambitions lie away from Celtic Park, you know, we're happy. You know, when we sell players that want to move on and we sell them for money, it lets us redevelop. We know as a club that's got to be one of the targets of Celtic, to bring in transfer income, because we don't have the big TV income.
No.
So we can't do that without moving players on. Clubs aren't going to pay you money for people that are sitting on your bench or not even in the squad. So it's going to be first teamers that we're going to lose, isn't it? And in general, they're going to be your better players.
I think that's one that, for a couple of reasons, hopefully we don't have to face that dilemma again in January, Lawrence. I would understand, you know, you're looking at the results, the financial results, and you're looking forward to the next set of results and what's going to happen globally, financially, between now and then. Is something we might have to face in terms of selling off assets, and the biggest assets are players that, I mean, you mentioned Edouard, and we didn't say he was worth £40 million. There was talk of £30-40 million. You'd struggle to get anywhere near that under the current financial situation. So Celtic have been very patient. So, you know, it's probably best for the players as well, because they're not going to get the same deals. They're not going to have the same clubs interested in them at this moment in time. But where will the club be a year down the line financially? It's going to be a concern for every football club.
I think you touched the January transfer window, and hopefully, I think performances will have improved. We should at least still be in the run for 10 in a row. So I don't think the club will be looking to cash in on anyone then. We might be looking to bring someone in. You never know. After this season's over... Centre-half.
Once everybody's fit, Lawrence.
Who's going to get fit? That's the thing. I think recruitment's been good, hasn't
Julien is my concern. That's why I'm throwing it in there. Not because of Duffy. Julien's injury, like all injuries, came out of nowhere, but it seems more serious than first thought. He's getting sent to Germany for surgery, and we don't know at this moment in time how long he's going to be out. We've already got long-term absences and Forrest and Johnson.
But Johnson's got to be close to coming back.
He's bound to be close. I mean, he started training a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And again, a brilliant option when he does come back,
Yeah.
as will Forrest be. Forrest is missed, and he gets a lot of criticism, but he has been missed. Julien is on that long-term injury list, so that's why I'm throwing in centre half again.
Well, kind of 2 years backup centre half, Speeton and El Hamid have also unfortunately been unavailable recently due to injury and COVID. So,
What's Simunovic doing? Sorry, we'll park that one for next week.
I'm just surprised with you it wasn't Benkovic.
Oh God, aye. Adam Crockett, final point. Griff is the best set piece taker in Scotland. Totally agree with you, Adam. And on Thursday night, what I would actually do is I'd make sure Griffiths is taking the corners and the free kicks.
Yep.
Let Christie concentrate on his game, because it's the one aspect of his game that can frustrate us, I think, sometimes. So we're looking ahead to Thursday, Lawrence. I think it's been fairly positive today. It's not all been doom and gloom. You'll be joining us again next week, and we can confirm if you're coming in on Sunday as well to watch the game with us, Lawrence. But it's always a pleasure. Thanks everybody for getting involved with the comments. There's been a lot of abuse over the last couple of weeks. If you notice any of that on the comments, please flag it up to me. It's not always possible for me to see that whilst we're doing the broadcast, and we'll block anyone if necessary. But all that's left for me to say, Lawrence Conley, is thank you again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks for having me. Keep the faith.